Hey gang, Mark Sweeney here from Austin Dental Spa in beautiful and hot Austin, Texas. If you're wondering why we're shooting this about 5 hours earlier, typically for the last 7 years we've done it around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, but we're having to do it at lunchtime today. It's about 1 o'clock here, a little after 1:30, because tonight is the big gala for the Austin American Statesman newspaper that has the contest every year with Community Choice Awards that they used to call Best of Austin. And we're up in all three dental categories: Best Dental Office, Best Cosmetic Dental Office, and Best Dentist. So hopefully we're going to bring home the bacon in at least one of those, and maybe all three, who knows, but I'll know by about 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. So we're having to shoot Wisdom Wednesday a little earlier, but it'll still be available for the next several days on Facebook. So welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. If this is your first one, you will know that we have a theme every month, and this is unfortunately the last month of Wisdom Wednesdays. After 7 solid years of doing this every week, we're putting it to a close at the end of September. And so I've got 2 more left this week and next week. So our theme for the month was Sign Off September. And so if you've tuned in before, you know that we always have a scientific topic. It's sometimes related to dentistry, more often related to just whole body health, which is what today is going to be about. And then I end with a health tip that usually segues from whatever topic we were on to something that you can use immediately to make your life better. Today should be really fun. I don't think we've ever covered this subject before, but dreaded daylight savings is coming up the first weekend in November, where it's spring forward and fall back. So we're going to fall back an hour, and people grumble about it because all of a sudden now it's dark at 5:30, 6 o'clock at night instead of being light until 7 or 8. Some of that is because of the seasonal shortening of the daytime period, but we have a little history here of daylight savings time just for historical perspective. And then Stanford researchers just came out and published an article that has to do with health in the United States and how daylight savings time might affect your health, which I think you might find interesting. I certainly did. So let's do a little history on daylight savings time. It actually was begun in Germany, believe it or not, in 1916. And the reason that they instituted it to begin with was to try to maximize the amount of daylight time at the end of the day, where it was actually backed by the Chamber of Commerce in the United States when the U.S. Put it into effect right after World War I in 1918. And it was backed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The reason they did it in Germany and the reason it expanded to the United States is the thought process on the economic business owners was that if people had several hours of daylight left at the end of the day, they'd be more likely to go out and go shopping. Well, that was way before Amazon and all the online shopping that you can do now, which doesn't have that much to do with daylight. But that's the reason daylight savings was first brought into play during the winter months, is so that the days would have a little more daylight at the end of the day. Again, thinking that people would be more likely to shop in the evening after they got off from work if there was still daylight left. But this is something interesting. The Stanford researchers studied 3 different phases. They studied permanent standard time, where the daylight did not change. They studied permanent daylight savings time, an hour offset from the other one. And then they studied the biannual shifting, going on to daylight savings in beginning of November and off of it in April. And they found that it affected the circadian rhythms in our bodies. Which circadian rhythm is a function that goes on in the background in your brain that has to do with daytime and nighttime. A lot of states that are up farther north where the daylight gets much shorter and night times last longer, there are a lot of people that are affected by seasonal affective disorder because they need more daylight. And so if you know about circadian rhythms, I knew about that, but I did not know about circadian burden, which is what these Stanford researchers said, that it actually can create stress on your body if the times are changing. And so they found that of the three, either staying on regular time all the time, staying on daylight savings time all the time with no change, and the twice a year changes, that of those three categories, the people that did the worst and the category that had the most negative effect on the human body was the one we're on right now, where it changes in October or November and then changes again in April. They didn't say exactly how they knew this stuff, but the Stanford researchers said that staying on one or the other instead of changing would prevent 300,000 cases of strokes per year, and 2.6 million fewer people would have obesity. Now, they didn't go into in this study how they derived that. They just used this circadian burden thing, but they found that under permanent standard time, which means more daylight in the morning, that people were going to be more healthy. So this is from Stanford. You're probably going to see more of this out there in the coming weeks as the news outlets pick this up. And maybe they'll explain how they linked daylight and how much daylight we had, and whether it was an hour forward or the standard time, how that affected strokes and obesity. But I'm curious to look into this a little more myself, but look for it out there in the news. So here's my health tip for the week, which has to do with that, because if you stay up late and then wake up late, you're losing a little daylight. And so here's 3 tips to waking up early. Number 1, researchers said, turn to the light. The sooner after you wake up in the morning, the sooner you draw back the blinds, let some light in, or go outside and get the paper, or sit outside and have a cup of coffee. The sooner you get your body exposed to sunlight, the more it can get balanced. Number 2, get moving. Well, that's a pretty straightforward one. If you get up and exercise or stretch in the mornings, you're already doing it. But researchers say once you're up, the sooner you get to moving around, whether it's stretching, doing yoga, just doing some jumping jacks, whatever. Jack LaLanne had that figured out, and he lived into his 90s. Number 3, consistency is the key. We hear that over and over with any new habit, to try to stay consistent with the time you go to bed at night and the time you wake up in the morning. Consistency is the key, even on the weekends, to not vary several hours as to when you go to sleep and when you wake up. And there's a bonus one that just made sense to me. We've touched on coffee a couple of times over the summer. Coffee is your friend in the morning, not so much at night. If you drink caffeine after 5 o'clock in the evening, you might potentially be disrupting your ability to go to sleep. So have that cup of joe in the mornings, and it might help get you up and going a little bit quicker, and certainly works for me. So that's it for this week's episode of Wisdom Wednesday. We will see you next week for our last version of Wisdom Wednesday.